Yo, what is up, y'all? Welcome back to a new video. We're gonna be doing something different this time where my last Cleave guide was like 6 months ago. So I decided, you know what? There's a lot of new people that have joined my server that are asking for Cleave help. I'm gonna make this video for them. But disclaimer that this list is not only targeted for new players, but veteran players as well. Mainly Emperor Plus. To be honest, it's more suited towards Emperor Plus. That's why you have units like Flitty that are up here. But like for new players, she'd be like down here, right? But this is for like new players for the long run, where they're visioning playing Cleave for a very long time, and this video is mainly for those people. So yeah, I have pretty much every Cleave unit on here. I'm pretty sure. I don't think I'm missing anyone. So we're just gonna go through the list. So yeah. First unit, Zeo. I mean, he's the best Cleave unit for all levels of play, right? You need a Zeo to Cleave. If you don't have a Zeo, then you can't Cleave. It's as simple as that. He's just way too versatile. He's guaranteed turn 1 every time. He has a billion follow-ups. He has like what, Ilwig, Rowana, Blooming Litica, Sharklot, Jacko, right? Even stuff like Fiend back in the day. So he just has so many follow-ups that make him really good, and he also warps the draft. So yeah, definitely need Zeo if you're cleaving. Ilwig, another mandatory unit. So there's two main cleave teams right now in the meta. There's the Zeo Ran cleave, and there's the Flitica cleave. And then Ilwig is a staple of Zeo Ran cleaving, where he's the best follow-up for that cleave. Because there's not much interruption for that. So that's why you definitely need Ilwig if you're gonna be Zeo Ran cleaving for sure. Faith of Litica, again, not really meant for new players, but if you're a high-end player, she's definitely very broken. Where you have the Flitica, Veronica, Sid, DDR from your draft. That's super strong. You can also pivot out into like Flitica, like Nockwol. You can pivot out into like other RGB units. That is not necessarily Veronica and Sid. You can also pick stuff with Angers. You can pick like Flitty and like Candy, Flitty and like Arya, depending on their draft, right? Very versatile unit. Now Ran, obviously it's Ran, right? Like, especially with the third pick Postman, I think he's going to be very strong. I've been testing him in RTA where I've been pre-banning Zeo and Bellion, and then putting Ran on the third slot because I could just pick one Speedly and then pick 4 follow-ups. And then they can't ban my Ran, right? Because he's ban protected. And it's a super strong draft. I might upload a video on that, so be on the lookout. And obviously, not very many counters. He's a fucking RNG unit up the ass. If he defense breaks, that unit is pretty much dead on the follow-up, so super strong. Politis is here because she's also a staple of Zeo Ran cleaving. It stops a lot of the counters to Zeo Ran, like Sage Ball, like Elena, like Karina, like pretty much anything that relies on CR, right? She can pretty much stop. And she's another book holder for Ran, so very strong. And she's also good in stuff like Ahmed Cleave. She's just very versatile. And she does a lot of damage on the S2, S3 as well, especially if their defense broken. So, yeah, definitely a mandatory unit for cleaving as well. Rowanna's here because if like the thing about Rowanna is her and Poli, they pretty much counter every single CR unit in the game. So if they pick stuff like Elena, AOL, Sage Ball, or any of those three together, right? They automatically lose to Politis Rowanna, like no matter who they ban. It just stops all CR. So very strong unit. She's good into anti-Zeo teams as well. She has a shit ton of damage. Just guaranteed follow-up no matter what. And she's a book. Like, she does everything. And she dispels a buff. And defense breaks on the S1. Like, she literally does everything. Such a strong unit. And you can't pick stuff like Politis and AF units anymore because you can just pair it with Ran, where any units with extra turns is guaranteed Rowanna to take the next turn. So very strong. Or Nockwol too. I've been picking Nockwol and Rowanna at times. And speaking of Nockwol, the next unit on this list, very broken. because a variation of the Zeo Ran cleave is doing Zeo Knockle cleave. And you pair Knockle with what's the artifact? The candle artifact where defense breaks. And it's pretty much Ran 2.0. Except now you also have bind and you have a seal on top of that. So it just shuts down counterattackers as well. Like Rand's biggest losing matchup is counterattackers, where stuff like Candy can just like salvo you, or AU Fiend can just AoE counter you and then your whole team dies, or like Ed or something like that. But Knuckle, she kind of just shuts those down. Like you can't do anything about it. So Knuckle is very good into counterattackers, which is why she's a mandatory unit for that. And she has like, she pretty much does Rand's job. Like they all have the same follow-ups, right? Rand and Knuckle, like Elena, Caesarea, like anything with an AoE, right? Jacko, even Wandering Prince Sid, you know, etc., etc. Blooming Lidica, the new girl on the block. So when I first made my video, I rated her pretty low, but she's actually broken. Just being able to one-shot a bruiser for free is so strong. She can one-shot Karinas, she can one-shot Aidens, she can one-shot Candies, she can one-shot AU Fiends, she can one-shot anything that's below like 20k HP. And she just gives your whole team skill null, she pushes back so you can't bring Politis into her, she applies unbuffable, so stuff like Karina just loses too. Super obnoxious unit for Cleave. And it's just such a strong unit. Like she can one-shot fire units as well because she gets the speed difference, right? Yeah, just very strong unit, and she can be paired with pretty much anything that relies on a debuff. So, Astromancer Elena, you know, another mandatory unit you need for Cleave, not mainly for RTA but for Arena and Guild War, but RTA as well because you always want to have an Elena in case they pick so many counterattackers, and you just want it as a force span. So that's pretty much the only reason she's mandatory. Veronica, you know, not only she has speed imprint, she counters Kayron, which is the biggest counter to speed imprint teams. So they can't go Kayron anymore. And she's good in the Flitty drafts though. And she kind of deals with Genoa in a way. Sid, obviously the strongest imprint in the game for sure. Only gives 10, but the damage he gives is just way too much. He automatically kills 2, depending if you have the right setup and if you have souls or not. But being able to kill off 2 units for free is just way too strong. He's just such a strong damage dealer. DDR, he's here because of the Flitty draft, right? As I mentioned earlier. And he's just a good like flex pick as well. Like even if you're Zeo rank cleaving, if you notice the team like gets destroyed by DDR, like he's even good there. Like he doesn't need follow up at all, which sounds like crazy because he kind of like it kind of looks like you need to push up the DDR for CR, but like you just sleep everyone, and it's like, what can they do? And then the teams that you pick DDR into, they're all slow teams anyways. So you don't even need CR on him. Like, you're not gonna be picking DDR into like fucking Sage Ball or something like that, right? Only into like mitigators and like Aidens and shit. So Wanderer Silk, another imprint that you need to build. She's the best 14 speed imprint in the game, just because she has the S2. That's pretty much it. And obviously she needs Guiding Light if you're gonna be running Wanderer Silk or Immunity, one of the two. Guiding Light's just more accessible because you don't need to build her on immunity, because speed immunity pieces are hard to get. Now on to the next tier. We have Ahmed, right? I had her on the highest tier in the past, but she kind of fell off just because there's way too many counters to Ahmed Cleave. Like you have Moon Bunny, you have Politis, you have Zeo, Candy's annoying if you don't have ML Ken, AU Fiend's annoying. Like there's just a lot of stuff that can beat her nowadays, and it's just kind of sad. And Celine got buffed too, which is not very fun for her, because you can't target the Celine now. But she's still good as like a 3 or 4. So yeah, I mean she's the best activator in the game still. Like she activates everybody. So that's why she's a really strong cleave unit. It's just she herself gets countered really easily. So yeah. Vildred, still a good imprint. If you're racing, I'd say he's pretty much a requirement to have. But he's only good in race teams, right? Like him versus like other teams, he just doesn't do enough damage. And yeah, that's what's not really worth picking him in those. But in race drafts where you're racing someone, he's still really good. You can pair him with Wanderer Silk, where you can just S2, Vildred S1, and then S2 and kill everything. So yeah. See Pavel, he was also in mandatory tier, but then ML Poly came out and he kind of like dropped off like hella because you can't pick him at all into ML Poly, and she's picked everywhere, right? So see Pavel's value kind of dropped a bit. Still really important to have still though, just in case they don't have ML Poly, and if ML Poly's pre-man, then you can pick C Pavel. But he also loses to Elvira, right? So it's not as easy to pick C Pavel anymore, which is why he kind of dropped off a bit. But still really good. The other Pavel, on the other hand, he's been going up in the meta because he deals with counterattackers, and if you pair him with a book, he can S2, S3, kill one, proc Sash Itanes, and then push up the rest of your team. Again, this is the Emperor plus tech. If you're like a new player, he's probably like here. It's just like Flitty, but high-end players will know how to make Pavel work. So if you know, you know. Fumir, again, pretty much the same case as DDR. It's just that she's not as versatile as DDR because you need to pick Fumir into or pair her with RGB units. So that's the only reason why she's here and not in the top tier. Jacko, still a really good follow-up. She deals with Laya. She pretty much one-shots Laya if they don't have mid. She one-shots Moon Bunny through mid. Those are the main two scenarios where I pick Jacko. She can also deal with like other units as well. Like surprisingly, she's actually not terrible into Karina if you pair Jacko with Blitica, right? Because you could give Blitica the Jacko debuff, and then Blitica just shuts Karina down completely. So yeah, in those scenarios, she's pretty good. Eligos is here, similar to Pavel, where he can deal with evasion and counterattackers, kind of. Not really counterattackers, but like evasion mostly, where you can pick the Zeo Ilwig draft, and then if they pick Aiden early, you don't have to go Rand. You can just go Eligos, and then it just solves that problem for you. The follow-up, you know, the Soulburn defense break, you can defense break like a Karina, and then Ilwig can go clean up, and then Eligos can clean up another one off of his S2, so yeah. Fire Shuri, mandatory for racing, but not really picked elsewhere, which is why he's just at a priority tier. He is the second best 14 speed imprint in the game, or is he the only other one? No, Surin, yeah. Like he's better than Surin, but he's like an alternative to Vildred. That's my best comparison. They kind of do similar things, but Shuri gets more speed. So Summer Break, mainly picked versus anti-Zeo teams and Aiden. So yeah. Besides that, like she's okay into like Ed. I pair her sometimes with if I'm fading against the Steny because I need reach or something like that. Yeah, decent with Zeo. We can just S1 with Zeo and then she procs, and then yeah. Surin, she by herself is trash, but then she gives 14 speed, which is why she's a priority unit. That's pretty much it. I like my build on Surin is if I'm racing with Zeo, then I can Soulburn Surin S2, S3, and then she gets a kill. So she's on that kind of build, but I've also seen people run her on prot set, so your team can survive on Ran S3. TML, she's up here. She's just like Pavel and Eligos, where she's a Ran replacement, depending on the team. If you need like a bridge or something like that, you know, she gets attack buff for everyone and CR pushes, which is obviously really good. So Summertime Izaria, I was debating putting her in flex or priority, but I ended up putting her in priority because she's still, even though she loses really badly to Ed and Designer, I'm not really seeing too much of those units nowadays, and Those units themselves have pretty big counters now. Like Blooming Litica shuts that down. So Summertime with Blooming Litica shuts down Designer, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that's why she's up here now. Briar Witch, she's just mainly a force band in the last slot. If they pick like Rimuru, Destina, Aiden, what else is there? Like any buff heavy teams, you know? Like you'll know when a Briar Witch is a force band, depending on their job. Like RB, or, you know, like when you see RBs, when you see K-Rons, etc., etc. So yeah, A-Laika, she fell off pretty badly just because the meta's super aggressive, so you don't really need an A-Laika anymore. But she's still nice to have. And she's a book too, so I mean better than Straze in that case. Ada, she also is struggling in this meta. Her build, if you're gonna build an Ada, she needs to have effectiveness now, and she also needs to be like 250, 260 speed so she can guarantee cut. But yeah, just not a good time for Ada at the moment. I mean, she's decent to Genoa at least, but she loses to like everything else. Flan, you pair with Ahmed, but besides that, she's not really picked. Gala, she's a green unit replacement if you're running Flitty Cleave, and she just super strong, right? She acts as a bridge, and she does a fuck ton of damage. So, Hera, this is another Rand replacement in case Rand's pre-banned, or if they take Rand, then you would just take Para here. They're kind of different, mainly in the fact that Para loses to Moon Bunny, but Rand doesn't lose to Moon Bunny. That's like the only difference. But besides that, you can pretty much like put them together, or what's that word? You can use them interchangeably. Martial Artists can just Cleave follow up for Ahmed or Flan if they have ML Landy. Pretty much it. Yeah, you run them on Destruction Torrent. So Judge Kisei. Now this unit, she's not as bad as everyone makes her out to be. Like her kit is good. It's just she loses to 15%, which is the shitty part about her, which makes her bad. But her kit herself is not bad. Like if you get 15%ed, then okay, unfortunate. But you just need to not 15% on the actual key units, right? Like the actual key units, if those key units get defense broken and unable to counterattack, like a Landy for example, then she's done her job. It doesn't matter if she gets 15% on the other units, because your follow-ups will just kill the main threats. Because of that, I do think Judge Kisei is not like as bad as people make her out to be. Yeah. Straze, kind of similar to A-Laika. Like him and A-Laika are kind of interchangeable, so I think they'll always be in the same tier. Watcher Sherry, just a regular speed imprint, nothing special. He's a DPS. You run him on Sashi, Thanes, or Guiding Light, depending on your playstyle, I guess, like how you draft the Watcher Sherry. Mine's on Sashi, Thanes. I mean, yeah, that's really all it is. It's a typical speed imprint. LPK, with her buffs, her damage is like insane. Which is why I think if you want to run an evasion killer, it's going to be LPK from now on. Not Zahog and not Shao-Tier. Because she's guaranteed to just kill any evasion unit. Right? She ignores damage sharing and damage reduction now, which is like insane. So, C-Phantom Politis, she's not really a cleave unit, but she does have some follow-ups. Like she has Ada, she has Blooming Litica, and she has Genoa. But that's really it. So she's very limited in terms of cleave follow-ups. But for aggro, she's like the best unit in the game, right? But this is a cleave tier list, not an aggro tier list. So, excuse me, Celeste. Again, this is more for like Emperor Plus. Like, if it's like a new player, you won't even have Celeste on this list. But if you have extra speed gear lying around, like with like literally random substats, like she doesn't need anything but speed because you're only picking her in imprint teams. Just give her your best like shitty speed gear in terms of substat roles, like the other substats roles, not in terms of the actual speed value, but like in terms of the other substats. Then you just give that gear to Celeste, and you can start racing with Celeste. Because all you have to do is just push back with the S2 and then you win. So, yeah. Wandering Prince said, he's okay. That's really it. Like, he loses to immunity. And like, but the problem with him is that he can't strip the immunity, right? That's why you have to pair him with a unit that can strip. But those units themselves, like, those units, like for example, let's say Ran, right? You're gonna get Aiden'd on, and then she's gonna cut and then kill your Sid. Or they pick like counterattackers, like a Candy, or like AU Fiend, you know, the typical stuff. And then your Sid's also just gonna die. Like, I think if he stripped immunity, I think he'd be very strong, but he's still okay, right? You'd have to pair Sid with a non-attack skill strip, like an ML Politis, for him to be good. But then if you do that, then you can't make use of his S2 at all. So yeah, it's kind of a weird case for Sid. Celine. Now, Celine is used in situations where you can make use of their non-attack skill proccing. Like, for example, Krina S2, right? Senya S2, you know, stuff where, or AOL S2, stuff where you can punish them for proccing their skills. So, for example, I've seen a draft where they went like a Krina plus Steny, and if I proc the Krina, then the Steny just dies to my Celine. So, yeah, stuff like that. Or if they go like Krina plus Laya, then if I proc their Krina, then Celine procs, and then Celine can kill their Laya. So yeah, she's good in those like niche scenarios, I guess. Kisei, just an Amit follow-up. You're only picking her with Amit, that's pretty much it. Karik, he got his buff on his speed, but he's only an aggro killer, that's pretty much it. He doesn't really have, I mean, he has Cleave follow-ups, but he himself is just a bad unit, so yeah. Zahak, I rated him as the best evasion killer because of his S2 utility, but even now his S2 utility is outshadowed just by the pure amount of damage LPK does now, so I wouldn't really pick Zahak anymore. Like, his S2 is still decent, but unless you're pairing him in a, I guess that's true. You could pair Zahak in a Flitty draft. You can't do that with LPK, and actually you can do it with Shalltier, but you can't do it with LPK, so that's like the one benefit for Zahak, is being able to replace your Sid in a Flitty draft. Closer Charles, just the worst TML. They do the exact same thing, but just worse TML. Shalltier, I think Shalltier and Zahak are going to be in the same tier from now on. They're very, very similar units. Like, I think they're as good as each other. That's pretty much it. Opsig, this unit's pretty bad, but she is decent into barrier teams if you have a good enough damage build on her. Like, her biggest weakness is just her lack of damage, but if you're running cracked gear on Opsig, which I wouldn't know why you would in the first place, then I guess she's pretty niche. So yeah. Lua's still here just because, you know, the good old like Lua Bleedy drafts, the Lua Ada drafts, Lua A Laika if you're running her on Song of Stars, but that's pretty much it. Like, she's pretty bad besides that. Says only picked with Almond and Flan, so another one of those usage cases. Same with VBK. Gloomy Rain, a very, very niche character where you need to race with Zio, but you have an Iwig on the team, right? So you would pick stuff like Gloomy Rain to sort of give you extra souls for your Iwig to just nuke. So command model Laika, I mean, she's only here for the S2. That's the only scenario where you would pick her in Cleave, is if you're S2ing with like a Vildred, right? So Alots, he got his buff, so he's faster now, but still pretty slow overall. That's why he's niche. Now, for these bad units, I'm not even going to go over them. it's not worth building them. That's all you have to know. Like, just don't even bother. Now, we're going to talk about the anchors now. So, I separated these into two categories where I have a true anchor and a counterattack anchor. Now, it should be pretty obvious what the difference is. True anchors are units that anchor against all forms of anti-cleave, while counterattack anchors are anchors versus only against counterattackers. That's pretty much the difference. So for true anchors, you have Aeufine, Laia, Candy, Aiden, Arya, and Dark Corvus. And counterattack anchors, you have Bloom and Haste, LHC, Genua, Biblis, and Krina. Now another difference between the two is that counterattack anchors are guaranteed follow-ups versus counterattackers. So for example, my Bloom and Haste, I'll just show my Bloom and Haste actually. This should be easier to explain. So my Bloom and Haste is on Water's Origin. And he's on 257 speed. So if they counterattack and hit the Bloom and Haste, he's guaranteed to take the next turn. So if they have a Candy and they kill one of my units with a salvo, or if they have an Aiden, right, and the Aiden one-shots one of my Cleave units, then Bloom and Haste pushes up and then one-taps and then revives. Guaranteed, right, because of Water's Origin. Same thing with Lionheart Sturmia. My Lionheart Sturmia isn't really a anchor because she's really squishy, but she's another unit that punishes counterattackers, right? And she's guaranteed to take the next turn after. Same with Genua. If Genua procs, he's guaranteed to take the next turn, right? Same thing with Biblis. If they proc Biblis, then she's guaranteed to take the next turn because of her S2. And same with Karina. If they proc Karina, she's guaranteed to take the next turn because of her speed, right? So yeah, so counterattack anchors are meant to take the next turn after they counterattack. They punish counterattackers super hard. But true anchors, they're not guaranteed to take their next turn. Like Laia, there's no way to push up a Laia, unless you yourself are pushing her up. So these are just quote unquote true anchors. It really depends on the scenario when you will pick which, but it's important to have some of these units, like 100%. Because you never know when you have to pivot out in case they pick too many counterattackers or if they pick too much traditional anti-cleave like Sage Ball. So yeah, I'd say my favorite true anchor is probably still Arya, just because she's so good into regular anti-cleave like Ed, Karina, Sage Ball. Like she just completely shits on those teams, and I don't know, it's just funny 1v4ing every time. As for my favorite counterattack anchor, it's definitely Genoa plus Bloom and Haste. Like these two together are super strong. Like I'll make a video on it soon where I'm first and second picking BMH and Genoa and third picking Ran, because Ran's biggest counters are counterattackers, right? But that's why I have BMH and Genoa, so it shuts that down. Now, I'll just be going over some team comps that are pretty popular nowadays. Yeah, let me switch back. So, now you have this list, right? Let's just start making some teams. So, yeah, like I mentioned before, one of my favorite drafts is going BMH Genoa for a second pick, and then going Ran on the band protected slot, and then going Ilwig plus another unit here. So the idea of this draft is you pre-ban Zeobellion, and Ilwig is his biggest weakness is just dying to a counterattack as well, right? But that's fine because you have Genoa and BMH, so they can just revive the Ilwig, and he's guaranteed to take the next turn because he's soul burned your Ran that they can't ban, right? And then this last unit would just be like, I don't know, it could be anything depending on the team. It could be Ada. I like picking this strat sometimes. It gives me a second book, and Ada also loses to counterattackers, so that's why I like picking Ada here. Like Jacko could be decent, I guess. It really could be anything like Rowana, etc., right? So another draft I like going is, you know, the traditional Zeo Ran Cleave. You go Zeo Ran, you know, Ilwig, Where's C Pavel? C Pavel, and then like last pick can be Eligos. Last pick can be like Astromancer. Last pick can be Politis. It really depends on the team. But that draft is still pretty good. It's just not as strong because Emma Poli's released. So this team only works if Emma Poli's pre-banned. So yeah. Another one I like to go. The infamous Flitty draft, right? So you go Flitty first pick. Your pre-bans are going to be AU Fiend and Candy. Oh yeah, for the pre-bans for Zeo Ran, it's Candy Bellion. But for Flitty draft or for Flitty Cleave, it's going to be Candy AU Fiend, where you pick Flitty first. You take Veronica, Sid, DDR, and Fumir. Right. Now, if let's say DDR is pre-banned, then instead of DDR, then you can just go Caesarea. That's what I like doing the most. Let's say they are playing super slow, so you don't have to pick these two imprints. Then instead of Veronica, you can just go stuff like Knockhole here, right? Now, since the ban protection slot's in the game, your Sid will always be in the game, right? You just pick Sid third. So it could be Sid in the third slot. It could be Gala in the third slot, right? It can be Blooming Lidica in the third slot. It can be Zahak in the third slot. Any one of these three. Right? And it'll work, essentially. Besides Knockout, the other fire units you can go is stuff like Fire Shuri. If your Fire Shuri is really fast. Stuff like Shaltir, I guess, right? Stuff like any fast fire unit pretty much can just work in that slot, essentially. So yeah, but it's mainly just going to be Knockwall, I think. Knockwall and Veronica. Again, you don't even have to go DDR or Fumir here. You can even go like, if they're picking stuff like Dragon King Shirin really early, then after you commit to these three, you can go stuff like C Pavel here, and then like a Jacko here or something like that. Or you can go something like a Ilwig here, right? Something like this, where you don't have to rely on any debuffs. You can even go Straze because you have Flitica, so Straze is guaranteed to take the turn. You know, it's super flexible, right? So yeah. Those are pretty much the main forms of Cleave. Oh, let me talk about the Zeoran one again. I didn't name the variations for that. So the variations for Zeoran, obviously Zeo, and then let's say Ran's pre-ban. You can go Para here. You can go Knockhole here. Let's say Knockhole is pre-ban. Knockhole Ran are also pre-ban. You can go like Ilwig, you can go TML, you can go Pavel, right? Pavel or TML with the C Pavel here, right? Something like this. Or like this. It really doesn't matter. Even this too. Like, there's a lot of second speed leads you can go besides Ran, which makes this draft also pretty flexible, but you have to pre-ban Candy and Bellion for this to work. Alright, I think that is it for the most part. I don't think I have anything else. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will drop a reply. But I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!